Hello everybody and welcome to part 3 of my War Thunder CDK tutorial. So today we're going to learn about AI. We're going to learn how to make area and unit squads and what the difference is between them. You're going to learn how to create multiple vehicles on a single unit and edit them all the same way. You're going to learn how to make a squad follow a waypoint. And you're going to learn how to make aircraft attack a target or a bomb point. So without any further ado, let's get started. As you can see, I've now loaded up a new map today because the Saipan map was getting quite small and it doesn't have any roads. So we've loaded up Sector Montmedy. In game this is called France 1944, you probably know it well. And I've already loaded in the reference file, because if you look here, we've got the player slots and we've got a reference file, and I've set the level to Sector Montmedy. Make sure you do that every time. We're going to put the assets on, and we're going to start first off with cloning multiple vehicles and making a squad. So first off, I need to tell you what a squad is. So a squad is basically, instead of having to assign every single individual vehicle to go do something, you can just group all those individual vehicles together into one unit, which is a squad, and then you can tell the squad to go do something. So it makes your life considerably easier, because instead of saying, okay, front vehicle do that, back vehicle do that, middle vehicle do that, you can just say, okay, the whole squad has to go do this same function. Obviously if you want to make different vehicles do different things, then you can, but that's very, very complicated. So we're just going to be sticking to squads. So we're going to go over to this road down here, and we're going to go over to the wheeled vehicles in the units because I want a truck, and we're going to create a unit. We're going to press P for the object properties. You can also press this document here, which will show the object properties. So I'll change it to a US cargo truck. Change the army to Team 1. Don't fire or hold fire. Because it's a truck, it doesn't really matter about the accuracy and everything. We'll align it so it's on the road, and we'll call it truck 1. This is all stuff you should already know, as it's been covered in previous tutorials. So now we're going to cover the multiple cloning. Now, obviously we're on the move tool, and if you press shift while pressing something on the move tool, it will clone it. So if I just like that, it will clone it, except we want this truck to be cloned in this road here to make a convoy. I'll show you this with aircraft later as well. So world and local are the two different types of movement. So as you can see, local is local to the vehicle, so the x-axis is the front of the vehicle, so local is the local front of the vehicle, but the world is the entire x-axis on the map. So as you can see, they are different. There we go. So for this we want local because we want the trucks spawning directly behind each other. And we don't want them spawning at an angle like that, which is where the x-axis actually is. So we're going to press this, and we're going to hold one of these lines and pull it in the direction we want it. So this will be the front truck. So I want trucks spawning behind it. So I'm going to grab this while pressing shift, drag it, and there we go. And now it will bring up the clone menu. And when you're moving it, that will be you setting the distance between them. So if I were to press cancel, and I was to do that, now I can, if I'm not letting go of shift and left click, and I'm moving the truck. So let's say I want that distance between the trucks. If I let go, I can now call these truck 2, and I can make a multiple amount of clones. And all of these clones will now mirror what these two are doing. So let's say we want 5. Now, if we look further back, you can see there's a perfect convoy. Except they're not all stuck to the ground, so what we're going to do to all of these is we're just going to click drop to floor. It doesn't exactly matter, but I like to do it anyway. There we go. So now the trucks are at a very slight slant, so what we're going to do is we're going to highlight all of these, and using the world, because we don't want the local, because if we do the local, then it will move the trucks individually like so. We don't want that. So we'll go over to world, and we'll rotate these like that, and it will use the pivot point. We want them directly on the road, like so. So now we've got our trucks, and we want to make a squad. So we want to squad all these groups together, these trucks together, to make a convoy. So we're going to highlight it again, and you'll see it now brings up an object properties menu, and it will say add to squad. It will say 6 vehicles selected, type wheeled vehicles, and it will specify the class as well, but you don't really need to do that. So you want to add to squad. You can either add to an existing squad that you've already got, or you can make a new one. So we'll call this convoy. and as you can see, it's now made a little crown, and that is the squad symbol. So if I move this around, it doesn't actually move the trucks, but if I press it, you'll watch the icons of these trucks. They turn yellow. So all the members in the squad turn yellow, so that's to highlight which ones are in the squad. As you can see, it's already added all of these automatically. Now there's two ways to make a squad. You can either do it that way, or you can go into here and you can make a squad, and then you can create unit, and it'll say, there you go, and now you have to add all these manually. Now that's a lot more time intensive, so I tend not to bother with this. The highlight, and then that works a lot nicer. So that is how you make a squad. There's another type of squad, which is an area squad. So obviously this is a unit squad because it's a bunch of trucks, but if we were to, let's say, make a circle, and then we were to go onto local, rotate this so it's in line, and we go over to the clone, let's make 3. Now we can highlight these, and you can make an area squad. I think you have to do it manually for area squads, but still, that is the difference. So the area squad looks like a little pine tree, and the unit squad looks like a crown. So those are the two different types of squads, areas and units. So we'll go over back to our trucks, and now we want to make the trucks move. So this is going to be covering waypoints. So waypoints in War Thunder are basically how the squad, or how a vehicle, it doesn't have to be a squad, it can be anything, but how a unit moves. So you can tell it to move in whatever direction you like. So we'll go over to here, and you'll see the road here next to create unit, which is create way. So we want to click create way, and we want to select only unit waypoints, and we just want to start drawing. And you see it's called the waypoint. And you see now I've made another one further down the road, and as you can see there's a red line connecting these two. That shows that this is the line that the trucks will travel in. So because this road is quite straight, wherever there's a bend, I'm going to put a new waypoint. So that is how you do waypoints. Of course you can make them go off-road. Now there's one more thing we need to do to make these waypoints work. We need to add them to the squad. So you can't actually add a waypoint to the squad itself. You have to add it to all the individual vehicles in it, which is annoying, but it is what it is. So currently this squad isn't actually following this waypoint. This waypoint exists completely separately to the squad. It doesn't know that it needs to travel along it. So what we need to do is on each of these trucks, obviously you can then set that. So this one is now following truck movements. This one is as well. 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 And this one is as well. Now there's one more thing you can do to make this a bit easier. You can kind of cheat it. I'm going to move truck 1 just to the side for the moment, and I'm going to show you something that you can do. Now these two things here called count and formation div are very handy. So if I set this to 3, we now have 3 vehicles on 1 unit. So this is 1 unit right here. I can't select these two because they're part of this unit. And then you can change the type of the formation, so we want it in columns, let's say, or we want it in rows. We can set it to 10, and then it will set rows like that, but we don't want that, so we want that. And you can mess around with these. So if you can have a really long convoy like that, which I think is awesome. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to delete these, and I'm going to add truck 1. I'm going to rotate it to the road. We will delete the convoy squad, and we'll make a new squad because it's only got 1 member in it, called convoy, and we'll add truck 1 to it. So now convoy is a part of truck 1, or truck 1 is a part of convoy, and truck 1 includes all of these vehicles, and you can mess around with the type of formation, and you can make your own formation, and it's really handy. So obviously you can make the you can change everything about the type of the formation. So now truck 1 is going to be following this waypoint, truck movements, because we've set the way name to truck movements. So now they're going to follow this route. If we select the waypoint, it makes it yellow, and you'll see that is the route that the truck's going to take. And they will move individually. So let's say truck 1 turns the starting truck, the front one in the convoy, turns the corner. none of these trucks are going to turn the corner at the same time as it, because that would look really stupid if these all acted as one body. They'll turn the corner as they all reach it, which is really, really handy. Of course, you can do it individually, but if you want something simple like a convoy with separate vehicles, you can literally do something like this. So that's a very handy little shortcut that you can use for waypoints, and that is how you set a ground waypoint. So next up, we're going to run through how to make the plane squads and make them attack individual targets and bombing areas. Of course, you can still make the ground unit that we've just done. If you make them tanks or whatever, you can still make them attack, but the point of this is so you can apply the skills to different parts. So you know how to make planes attack, so now using that knowledge you'll be able to know how to make tanks attack. So without any further ado, we'll get started. So we're going to make a unit. It's going to be an armada because we want it to be an aircraft. And we got it. So if we go over to move and then go over to properties, or press this document here, show/hide object properties panel, we can change the way name, the class. So the way name will make it follow a certain waypoint, so you can make a plane either go to a certain waypoint and then you can obviously make them follow that waypoint. You can make them do fancy turns and maneuvers and whatever, but we're just going to leave that as blank, so we're not going to do away. We'll leave it as Army 2 because I want these guys to shoot back, and we'll change it to a bomber. There we go. We'll call this plane 1, and we're going to make a formation of them using the multiple clone tool thing that we had earlier. Now you can of course increase the count like that, but it tends to make them quite close together, and generally obviously you can mess around with the formation type and whatever, but I tend to just like to leave it as is. I like to make them separately, so we'll reduce that back to 1. There we go. And we'll clone some planes. So I'm going to click the X and Z because I want it to be diagonal. So I'm going to move it over here, and obviously now you can see I can move it around. I'm holding shift and left click. I'm going to place it there. I'm happy they're there, and we'll get 4 of these guys in. There we go. And we've got 4 planes, and now we can copy those because I want to repeat the pattern. And directly below, and a bit behind. Now you see when you clone multiple objects, it will look like the team is set to 0 because it's got that blue plane instead of the red, but when you click on it, it will just set the team. There we go, I've clicked on all of them. So that's our Sterling formation, and we want them to go attack a target. So an important thing to note about AI attacking targets is you need them to have enough space where they can maneuver. So if we were to put the target, let's say, right below them, then obviously they wouldn't be able to bomb it because they wouldn't be able to react quick enough. So we're going to have to put one a bit further out. So we can put it, let's say, it's over here, and we'll make some tanks, and we'll put these guys on team 1. They're set to AA dummies at the moment, so I'll just change them to BT5s. Oh, CM11s, that works too. And we'll add these guys to a squad to make our life a bit easier. So this is target squad. So now we want the Sterlings to be able to attack these target squads. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to make a trigger. So if we go over to the document with the G, let's get rid of object properties, just drag that back a little bit, and let's make a new trigger, and we're going to call this one attack. It's going to be a periodic event, and you're going to have enable after complete ticked. For the action, you want to add unitAttackTarget. So now that we've added this trigger, we want to set the object and we want to set the target. So the object is obviously going to be these Sterlings. So actually, now that I think of it, I'm going to have to add these guys to a squad real quick. And we'll get that squad, we'll move it a little bit out of the way like that. You see it's highlighted all the members of the squad, so we know it's working. So let's go over here and we'll select the Sterlings. And we'll select the target as target squad. Now you want to enable fire at random, and that will basically mean that the aircraft will go and attack the target in like a random way. So they won't all go and bomb the same tank, because then obviously they'd collide into each other because they're all quite close. So they'll go and just generally bomb, you know, the target. So fire at random I always have enabled, and that is the attack trigger done. You now know how to make aircraft go and attack a target, but obviously that's a bit simple. We don't want the aircraft to just go fly over to the target and then once they've destroyed them, they'll just fly around aimlessly. We don't want them to do that. So we have to make a new trigger, and we have to call this one, I'll call it check, or bomb check. It's got to be below the attack trigger, and this is going to check if the Sterlings have bombs. And if they don't have bombs, i.e. they've dropped their bombs on the target, when they've dropped their bombs, they're going to go and do something, and they're going to go and move to a separate area. We can play around with this. Once you've dropped your bombs, you can now go over to and start following the waypoint, in which case they'll start flying around the pattern that you draw. Or you can make them say, okay, unitMoveTo, and then they'll just go over and move towards an area. I'm going to do unitMoveTo because I only want them to go in a straight line. I don't want them to do loads of fancy turns because they're a big bomber formation. So again, periodic event and enable after complete. You want enable after complete because it needs to be enabled after you complete the previous thing. So make sure enable after complete is ticked for these things. So we need to make a condition because obviously it needs to check if there's any bombs. So this is called unitWhenStatus. So unitWhenStatus, we're going to select the object, which is obviously the Sterlings. And here you can select the object type. So we need to check is bombs, or has bombs. Here we go, no bombs. So this means now that when the mission's running, that the trigger is going to check all the time if the Sterlings have bombs. And obviously you can change the duration at which the mission checks it. So I've just got it set to every second. Now if you want it to happen really quickly, obviously you can set it lower. I wouldn't advise going below 0.05 because if you put it to 0 the game will break, and obviously too high and it will break as well. So now we've got the checking for the bombs, but we need to disable the previous attack trigger. So when the Sterlings have dropped their bombs, they're no longer going to start attacking. So we need to make an action, and it's going to be trigger disable. And this is just simply disabling the attack trigger. So there you go. Trigger disable attack. So when the Sterlings have no bombs, they disable the attack trigger, so they stop their attack. Then we want a unitMoveTo. So this will make the Sterlings go move to a new location. So we need to select the Sterlings, and we need to set the move type. So we're just going to have them as move, and we need to have use for trigger filtered enabled. So now that we've got the unitMoveTo activated, this will now go and tell the Sterlings to go and move to a new thing, but obviously they don't know where to go. So we need to make a opposite of the trigger disable. So when the Sterlings have no bombs, they disable the attack trigger, and they begin moving to the new trigger. So we need the trigger activate. And this will be our new trigger, which will be called depart. Again, you want it to be enable after complete, and we'll go over back to bomb check, and we'll click depart. So now that we've got this new depart trigger, we need to set the area that the Sterlings are going to go to when they finish their target. So I'm going to have it a little bit to the side and a fair bit away. Let's put it over here, let's say. We'll make a circle, and this will be their depart points. This will be the area that they fly to after bombing their target. Go over to the properties, depart, point. And now we can go back into the depart trigger, and we can start making this. So we're going to make a condition, and this is going to be called unitWhenInArea. This will be checking every second, because it's a periodic event. This will be checking when the unit is in this area, and then we'll go do something else. So we want these Sterlings to reach this area. When they do it, we want them to despawn, or we just want them to whatever. You can make it whatever you want, but I want the Sterlings to despawn. So I'm going to use the unitPutToSleep action, but first we need to set this condition. So this is going to be checking when the Sterlings are going to be in this area. So Sterlings, when the Sterlings are in the depart point, then it is the action unitPutToSleep, and this will make them despawn. So we just want the Sterlings, and we want use for trigger filtered. This will mean that if one of the Sterlings reaches the zone first, that will mean that only it will despawn. So they all have to reach it independently. So if you had that off, when one reached the zone, they'd all despawn. But obviously, you want it so when they each reach the zone, they despawn. So that is unitPutToSleep, and that is basically it for the aircraft. We can obviously change this as well. So instead of a target, we can make it to a bombing area, which is what I'm going to do shortly. But now you know how to make the aircraft go and attack a target. You know how to make them fly around because you've got the waypoints, and you know how to make them then go to a different area and despawn. So that is basics of aircraft AI. Obviously you can make them attack each other because you can make them cross paths, and then you can make them shoot at each other because you can do fire at will and targetable by AI. So yeah, now we're going to make the bombing area. I'm going to delete this because I'm going to have it as a bombing area instead. It's very simple, but essentially what we want is a bombing area. Let's get the magnet off. By the way, if these turn on, just turn them off because they make it snap to grid squares. In fact, you know what I'll do? There we go, the drop to ground tool. So we'll go over to here, we'll call this bombing area. Now, something to note is that aircraft cannot just go and attack an area. They need stuff inside the area to attack. So we can either set it to be a structure, so I can make a structure. We go over to object groups, and we make a unit. And now the Sterlings will go and bomb this like camp thing. I mean, it's probably better if I change it to a base. We can move that into the area like that. And the Sterlings will now go and bomb the center of this point. Now, something very important to keep in mind is that the aircraft cannot go and attack an area, i.e. something like this. They need a unit. So this is a unit, this is an area. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to make several of these. We're going to add these to a squad first. So if we go over to P, and we click add to squad, add to new squad, bombing points, and then we go over to here, bombing area, drop it to the floor, and resize. We can make this expand the entire area that the Sterling is going to attack. So now if we go into the attack trigger and go over to the Sterlings and the unit attack target, we need to set this to bombing points. So I'm going to make a new trigger and I'm going to call this one bombing area. You can put it wherever you like, but I like to put the ones that are initialized at the start of the mission at the top. And for the event we want an init mission. Action, mission set bombing area. Again, this is stuff you know that was covered in part 2. So this should be pretty easy for you. And we're going to set this to the bombing area, set the army to 1 because the Sterlings are on team 2. And we'll set the HP to, 5,000. Keep in mind that HP is measured in kilograms. So that's it. That's how you make aircraft either attack a target, or a group of targets, or a bombing area. Now, if we go back over to these Sterlings, there's one thing I forgot to do, which is set the bomb loads. So if we go over to the, if we close this, and we go over to the unit properties, so we have to set the bomb load. So if we go over to weapons and bullets, and we click weapons none, we want them to have bombs, so I'll make them carry the maximum bomb load. Again, this is something unfortunately you have to do individually, which is why I advise, just as a rule of thumb with the CDK, I advise you fully set up a unit before you clone it. So I made a mistake here because I didn't fully set up the unit before I cloned it, but make sure you do, because then you won't have to go back and change these all one by one. So all the parameters and properties you want for a unit, make sure you do that before you clone them to avoid all this extra work. So now that the Sterlings all have their bomb loads, I believe our mission is ready to test. First we're going to have a look at the aircraft, and then we're going to have a look at the waypoint down below. So I'm going to make a spawn, just an aircraft spawn. I'll have to make a tank one as well. Now for air spawns, by the way, I advise that if you go over to the resize tool and you decrease the y-axis and make them as flat as possible, that way the aircraft all in this spawn can only spawn on like a very, very small range of altitudes. So if you have it to be a lot taller like this, everyone spawning at this spawn will spawn anywhere within this sphere. So if you want people spawning on the same height, have it as that. Okay, so we're ready to save our mission, and as you can see here, this is where I'm going to show off the console, because there's a problem in the mission verification. So if we go over to the console, it will show us where it is. So the bomb target, unitMoveTo, is not found. That's fair enough. So if we go over to bomb check, and we go over to the unitMoveTo, the Sterlings currently don't know where to go. So we need to set the object, which is the depart point. So now if we close that and we save it, it'll work. So if we go over to the Sterlings, you can see that they're now attacking. Because they're on the enemy team, they're going to be shooting at me. You see they're holding their formation. And as you can see down there, the trucks are all moving in unison. They're going down their waypoint, and that shows it's all working correctly. So now, you know how to make airplanes go to a target. You know how to make them fly away and then go to a despawn area. You know how to make airplanes and tanks go and follow a waypoint and make them follow a custom route that you made. And you know how to make the more complicated conditions. So thank you all very much for watching my 3-part series on the CDK. I really hope you enjoyed, and I really hope you learned something. If there's any errors in my videos, please do let me know, and if you have any questions, be sure to ask, because I will respond, because the CDK is a very contentious thing, and it takes a lot of experience to get used to how peculiar it is. in terms of its features and how some things work, some things don't, some things follow by that rule, some things don't, even though you think they should. So it can be a little bit confusing, but I really hope this made it a bit easier to understand for you all. So again, thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.